After hearing this, you may think I am crazy, and quite frankly, I don't blame you. This takes place a few years ago. I am not proud to admit it, but at the time, I was suffering from some pretty severe financial hardship, and in order to make ends meet, I was forced to engage in some petty theft. I had successfully burglarized a dozen or so houses and escaped with several minor valuables without issue. But one night, I got cocky and chose the exact wrong house to go into. The house was isolated in a remote location with an unkempt lawn and peeling paint, and honestly, wasn't very much to look at, but based on the flashy and very expensive sports car in the driveway, I suspected there may be something inside worth planning a heist over. I scoped the house out on a Thursday night, and returned the following night when the car wasn't in the driveway. I climbed in through a window that I had noticed open the night before, and tried to ignore the feeling of concern that came with the idea of the window being left open as an invitation. I unlocked the back door in case I needed to exit the house quickly, and looked around the house carefully to ensure no one was inside. Once I was certain I was alone, I started searching for any items of potential value. I found a pocket watch in a bedroom drawer that looked like it may be worth something, even though the battery was dead and the clasp was bent. As I slipped the watch into my pocket, I felt the sensation of a cold breeze pass over me, and immediately sensed that I was being watched. My stomach sank, and I decided I needed to get out of the house immediately. As I left the building and headed towards the back door, I suddenly froze in place as I noticed a shape in the living room that hadn't been there before. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, but when they did, I felt my blood go cold. There was a young man wearing overalls and a white t-shirt, staring directly back at me, looking as though he hadn't suspected to encounter me in the house either. He had straw-colored hair, hazel eyes, and massive arms, and looked like he could easily beat me to the back door if I tried to make a break for it. It was then I decided to do something very stupid. Having absolutely no idea if this guy was armed, I decided to try and rush him. I figured if I could knock him down for just a moment, I could escape through the open window. I darted forward directly at him, upending a rocking chair as I shortened the distance between us, and without making any kind of sound, he planted his feet and easily, almost effortlessly, raised his arms and shoved me right back across the room and sent me sprawling. I picked myself up from the ground, more shocked than hurt, and raised my fists as he began to walk towards me. As he came forward, he slowly unstrapped his overalls and pulled off his shirt and began to speak in a heavy southern accent. "Not this time, Daddy. This time, I'm punishing you." I legitimately froze in pure terror at the abnormality of his words and behavior. Was he actually about to beat me to death under the illusion that I was his father? Suddenly, the beams of headlights passed across the living room wall, and I turned to notice a flashy sports car pulling into the driveway. I had shifted my gaze off the young man for perhaps 3 or 4 seconds, but when I turned back, there was no one else in the room with me. There was no sound of the back door slamming, and there was no way he could have escaped out through the window that quickly and quietly. In full panic mode and not caring about the consequences, I darted out the front door and into the driveway, scaring the middle-aged couple to death as they stepped out of their car. I called out to them to call the police as there was a maniac hiding somewhere in the house. In retrospect, I really should have just kept running, but I was genuinely afraid that the stealthy young man in overalls may have chased me into the woods, and decided it was safer to stay by the car with the couple. When the police arrived, I was immediately questioned, searched, and locked in the back of a squad car. The police didn't find anyone else hiding in the house, but they did find the pocket watch I had stolen. They assumed, based on my story, that I was either on drugs or had attempted to rob the place with a partner who had tried to kill me. I spent some time in jail for petty theft, but what happened in that house never left my mind. When I got out, I decided to do some research on the place and discovered that a family had used to live in that house several decades ago, and the father had been beaten into a coma by the eldest son, who had later hung himself on the property with his father's pocket watch clasped in his hand. It hadn't occurred to me until that moment, but when the young man had crossed into the room to get at me, I didn't recall him stepping over the fallen rocking chair. It was almost as though he had passed through it. I'd like to also send out a special thanks to the author of this video, Seth Smith, and its editor, Tim Sonski. Thanks, guys.